Chapter 4. The Open Door. Flight into Darkness. Raceland sat down on the hearth, rubbing his thin hands in the warmth of the small fire. His golden eyes seemed brighter than the flames as he stared intently at the blue crystal staff resting across the woman's lap. "What do you think?" asked Tennis. "If she's a charlatan, she's a good one," Raceland commented thoughtfully. "Worm, you dare to call the chieftain's daughter charlatan?" The tall barbarian stepped toward Raceland, his dark brows contracted in a vicious scowl. Caramon made a low, rumbling sound in his throat and moved from the window to stand behind his brother. "Riverwind." The woman laid her hand on the man's arm as he drew near her chair. "Please, he meant no harm. It is right that they do not trust us. They do not know us." "And we don't know them," the man growled. "If I might examine it," Raceland said. Goldmoon nodded and held out the staff. The mage stretched out his long, bony arm, his thin hands grasping for it eagerly. As Raceland touched the staff, however, there was a bright flash of blue light and a crackling sound. The mage jerked his hand back, crying out in pain and shock. Caramon jumped forward, but his brother stopped him. "No, Caramon," Raceland whispered hoarsely, wringing his injured hand. "The lady had nothing to do with it." The woman, indeed, was staring at the staff in amazement. "What is it, then?" Tanis asked in exasperation. "A staff that heals and injures at the same time?" "It merely knows its own." Raceland licked his lips, his eyes glittering. "Watch. Caramon, take the staff." "Not me." The warrior drew back as if from a snake. "Take the staff," Raceland demanded. Reluctantly, Caramon stretched out a trembling hand. His arm twitched as his fingers came closer and closer. Closing his eyes and gritting his teeth in anticipation of pain, he touched the staff. Nothing happened. Caramon opened his eyes wide, startled. He gripped the staff, lifted it with his huge hand, and grinned. "See there!" Raceland gestured like an illusionist, showing off a trick to a crowd. "Only those of simple goodness, pure in heart." His sarcasm was biting. "May touch the staff. It is truly a sacred staff of healing, blessed by some god. It is not magic. No magic objects that I have ever heard about have healing powers." "Hush," ordered Taslov, who had taken Caramon's place at the window. "Theocrat guards," he warned softly. No one spoke. Now they could all hear the goblin footsteps flapping on the bridge walks that ran among the branches of the Valenwood trees. "They're conducting a house-to-house search," Tanis whispered incredulously, listening to fists banging on the neighboring door. "The seekers demand right of entry," croaked a voice. There was a pause. Then the same voice said, "No one is home. Do we kick the door in?" "Nah," said another voice. "We better just report to the Theocrat. Let him kick the door down. Now, if it was unlocked, that would be a different story. We're allowed to enter then." Tanis looked at the door opposite of him. He felt the hair rise on the back of his neck. He could have sworn that they had shut and bolted the door. Now it stood slightly open. "The door," he whispered. "Caramon." But the warrior had already moved over to stand behind the door, his back to the wall, his giant hands flexing. The footsteps flapped to a stop outside. "The seekers demand right of entry." The goblins began to bang on the door, then stopped in surprise as it swung open. "This place is empty," said one. "Let's move on."
"You got no imagination, Grum,"
said the other.
"Here's our chance to pick up a few pieces of silver."
A goblin had appeared around the open door, its eyes focused on Raceland sitting calmly, his staff on his shoulder. The goblin grunted in alarm, then began to laugh.
"Ho ho! Look what we have found! A staff!"
The goblin's eyes gleamed, took a step toward Raceland, its partner crowding close behind.
"Hand me the staff."
"Certainly," the mage whispered. He held his own staff forth. "Shyrock," he said. The crystal ball flared into light. The goblins shrieked and shut their eyes, fumbling for their swords. At that moment, Caramon jumped from behind the door, grabbed the goblins around the necks, and swept their heads together with a sickening thud. The goblin bodies crumpled into a stinking heap. "Dead?" asked Tanis as Caramon bent over them, examining them by the light of Raceland's staff. I'm afraid so," the big man sighed. "I hit them too hard." "Well, that's torn it," Tanis said grimly. "We've murdered 2 more of the Theocrat's guards. He'll have the town up in arms." Now we can't just lie low for a few days. We've got to get out of here. And you two," he turned towards the barbarians, "had better come with us."
Wherever we're going.
Muttered Flint irritably. "Where were you headed?" Tanis asked Riverwind.
We were traveling to Haven.
The barbarian answered reluctantly. "There are wise men there," Goldmoon said. "We hoped they could tell us about the staff. You see, the song I sang, it was true. The staff saved our lives." "You'll have to tell us later," Tanis interrupted. "When the guards don't report back, every goblin in Solus will be swamping up the trees. Raceland, put out that light." The mage spoke another word. "Tuba!" The crystal glimmered, then the light died.
What do we do with the bodies?
Caramon asked, nudging the dead goblin with his booted foot.
And what about Tika? Won't she get into trouble?
"Leave the bodies." Tanis's mind was working quickly. "And hack up the door. Sturm, knock over a few tables. We'll make it look as if we broke in here and got into a fight with these fellows. That way, Tika shouldn't be in too much trouble. She's a smart girl. She'll manage." "We'll need food," Tasselhoff stated. He ran into the kitchen and began rummaging through the shelves, stuffing loaves of bread and anything else that looked edible into his pouches. He tossed Flint a full skin of wine. Sturm overturned a few chairs. Caramon arranged the bodies to make it look as if they had died in a ferocious battle. The plainsman stood in front of the dying fire, looking at Tanis uncertainly. "Well," Sturm said, "now what? Where are we going?" Tanis hesitated, running over the options in his mind. The plainsmen had come from the east, and if their story was true and their tribe had been trying to kill them, they wouldn't want to go back that way. The group could travel south into the Elven Kingdom, but Tanis felt a strange reluctance to go back to his homelands. He knew, too, that the elves would not be pleased to see the strangers enter their hidden city. "We will travel north," he said finally. "We will escort these two until we come to the crossroads. Then we can decide what to do from there. They can go on southwest to Haven if they wish. I plan to travel farther north and see if the rumors about the armies gathering is true. And perhaps run into Kitiara," Raceland whispered slyly. Tanis flushed. "Is that plan all right?" he asked, looking around. "Though not the eldest among us, Tanis, you are the wisest," Sturm said. "We follow you, as always." Caramon nodded. Raceland was already heading for the door. Flint shouldered the wineskin, grumbling. Tanis felt a gentle hand touch his arm. He turned to look down into the clear blue eyes of a beautiful barbarian. "We are grateful," Goldmoon said slowly, as if unused to the expression of appreciation. "You risk your lives for us, and we are strangers." Tanis smiled and clasped her hand. "I am Tanis. The brothers are Caramon and Raceland. The knight is Sturm Brightblade. Flint Fireforge carries the wine, and Tasselhoff Burfoot is our clever locksmith. You are Goldmoon, and he is Riverwind. There! We are strangers no longer." Goldmoon smiled wearily. She patted Tanis's arm, then started out the door, leaning on the staff that once again seemed plain and nondescript. Tanis watched her, then glanced up to see Riverwind staring at him. "Well," Tanis amended silently, "some of us are no longer strangers." Soon everyone had gone, Tas leading the way. Tanis stood alone for a moment in the wrecked living room, staring at the bodies of the goblins. This was supposed to have been a peaceful homecoming after bitter years of solitary travel. He thought of his comfortable house. He thought of all the things he had planned to do, together with Kitiara. He thought of the long winter nights, the storytelling around the fire at the inn, the returning home, laughing together beneath the fur blankets, sleeping through the snow-covered mornings. Tanis kicked at the smoldering coals, scattering them. Kitiara had not come back. Goblins invaded his quiet town. He was fleeing into the night to escape a bunch of religious fanatics. With every likelihood, he could never return. Elves do not notice the passage of time. They live for hundreds of years. For them, seasons pass like a brief rain shower. But Tanis was half human. He sensed change coming, felt the disquieting relentlessness men feel before a thunderstorm. He sighed and shook his head. Then he went out the shattered door, leaving it swinging crazily on one hinge.